ADX Florence is widely considered the most secure prison in America. Officially known as the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, it was built to house inmates who are regarded as the most dangerous, violent, or high-risk offenders in the federal prison system. The prison opened in 1994 in Florence, Colorado, and quickly became famous for its extreme security measures and strict control over inmates. Because of its intense level of isolation and surveillance, it is often called the Alcatraz of the Rockies. The prison was specifically designed to prevent escapes, inmate violence, and communication between dangerous criminals and the outside world. Every part of the facility focuses on security. The buildings are constructed with reinforced concrete, steel doors, electronic monitoring systems, pressure-sensitive floors, surveillance cameras, and heavily guarded checkpoints. Even inmate movement inside the prison is tightly controlled, with prisoners escorted individually by armed officers whenever they leave their cells. ADX Florence houses some of the world's most notorious criminals, including terrorists, cartel leaders, gang members, spies, and inmates who committed violent acts inside other prisons. Many prisoners are sent there after attacking guards or inmates in lower security facilities. The prison's purpose is not rehabilitation in the traditional sense, but maintaining total order and preventing dangerous individuals from threatening society or prison staff. Unlike ordinary prisons where inmates may interact in groups, attend programs together, or move around more freely, ADX Florence operates under near total isolation. Prisoners spend most of their lives alone in small cells with extremely limited human contact. This strict environment is intended to reduce violence and maintain complete control over inmates considered impossible to manage elsewhere. ADX Florence is reserved for prisoners who are considered the greatest security threats in the United States federal prison system. The inmates sent there are not ordinary criminals. Many have long histories of violence, organized crime, terrorism, espionage, prison attacks, escape attempts, or leadership roles in powerful criminal organizations. Federal authorities place these inmates in ADX Florence because they are believed to be too dangerous to remain in standard maximum security prisons. The prison has held internationally known terrorists, cartel leaders, gang commanders, and criminals involved in mass violence. Some inmates were convicted of deadly bombings, large-scale drug trafficking operations, murders, kidnappings, or attacks against law enforcement officers and prison guards. Others were transferred there after committing violent acts while already serving prison sentences in other facilities. ADX Florence was designed specifically to contain prisoners who continue to pose a threat even after incarceration. One major reason inmates are sent to ADX Florence is their ability to influence or control criminal activity from inside prison walls. Certain gang leaders and cartel bosses have the power to order murders, trafficking operations, or acts of violence through coded communication networks. The strict isolation system at ADX is intended to cut off these connections and prevent inmates from directing criminal organizations outside the prison. Communication with the outside world is heavily monitored, and contact with other inmates is extremely limited. The facility has also housed individuals connected to major terrorist attacks against the United States and other countries. These prisoners are kept under especially strict supervision because officials fear they could inspire extremist activity or coordinate with outside groups if given opportunities to communicate freely. Security procedures are designed to eliminate even the smallest risks of organized violence, escape planning, or secret communication. Many inmates at ADX Florence have histories of attacking prison staff or other inmates in lower security prisons. Some were involved in deadly prison riots, assaults, or escape attempts before being transferred to the Supermax facility. Because of these risks, prison authorities classify ADX Florence as the final level of control within the federal system, a place for inmates who cannot safely be managed anywhere else, alone inside small concrete cells. Most prisoners remain confined for 22 to 24 hours each day, with very little human interaction. This level of isolation is one of the harshest conditions found in any prison system in the world and is a defining feature of life inside the Supermax facility. The cells are designed to limit movement, communication, and physical contact. Each inmate usually lives alone in a cell measuring around 7 by 12 feet. The cell contains only basic necessities such as a concrete bed with a thin mattress, a stainless steel sink, a toilet, a small desk, and a stool attached to the floor. Everything is built from heavy materials to prevent damage, self-harm, or use as weapons. The narrow windows are positioned in a way that prevents inmates from seeing other prisoners or even much of the outside world. In many cases, prisoners cannot tell exactly where they are within the prison complex. Meals are delivered through small slots in the steel doors, meaning inmates eat every meal alone in silence. Recreation time is also highly restricted. Prisoners may receive about 1 hour outside their cells each day, but this usually takes place in another enclosed concrete area, sometimes called a dog run. Even during exercise periods, inmates are kept isolated from one another and carefully monitored by guards and surveillance cameras. Human contact inside ADX Florence is extremely limited. Conversations with guards are usually brief and professional, and direct interaction with other inmates is almost non-existent. Many prisoners communicate only by shouting through vents or walls, though prison authorities attempt to prevent this as much as possible. Family visits are rare, heavily supervised, and often conducted through secure glass partitions. Phone calls and mail are also strictly monitored to prevent unauthorized communication. Supporters of solitary confinement argue that it is necessary for controlling highly dangerous inmates who could harm staff, attack other prisoners, or organize criminal activity if allowed regular contact. However, mental health experts and human rights organizations have raised serious concerns about the long-term psychological effects of extreme isolation. Studies and former inmate accounts describe symptoms such as anxiety, depression, paranoia, hallucinations, emotional instability, and difficulty functioning socially after years spent almost entirely alone. ADX Florence was designed with security as the highest priority, and this is clearly reflected in the construction of its prison cells. Every part of the cell is carefully engineered to reduce the risk of violence, self-harm, escape attempts, and attacks on prison staff. Unlike ordinary prison cells that may contain movable furniture or standard fixtures, ADX Florence uses solid concrete and reinforced steel throughout the entire environment to maintain strict control over inmates. The walls, floors, ceilings, bed frames, desks, and stools are made from poured concrete or heavy steel materials that are permanently fixed in place. This design prevents inmates from breaking objects apart and turning them into weapons. Even the sink and toilet are usually built from stainless steel and attached directly to the structure of the cell. The furniture cannot be moved, lifted, or dismantled, making it extremely difficult for prisoners to damage the cell or use objects aggressively. The doors are thick steel security doors equipped with small slots through which meals, medication, and documents are passed. Guards rarely need to open the doors directly unless absolutely necessary. Most inmate movement is controlled electronically, with officers operating remote locking systems from secure stations. This reduces physical contact between staff and inmates, lowering the risk of assaults or hostage situations. The windows inside the cells are also part of the prison's security strategy. They are narrow and specially positioned so prisoners cannot see other inmates or view the surrounding prison grounds clearly. In many cells, inmates can only see the sky or a limited section of the outside environment. This design helps prevent communication between prisoners and reduces opportunities for coordinated escape planning or violent activity. Ventilation systems, lighting fixtures, and utility systems are similarly protected. Openings are kept small and reinforced to prevent tampering. Surveillance systems constantly monitor activity inside many areas of the prison, while guards conduct regular inspections to identify any signs of damage, hidden contraband, or suspicious behavior. Every architectural detail inside ADX Florence serves the purpose of maintaining total control and minimizing risks. The prison itself is built with multiple layers of security beyond the cells. Reinforced fences, razor wire, guard towers, motion detectors, pressure sensors, and heavily controlled movement corridors create an environment where escape is considered nearly impossible. The construction reflects the prison's mission of holding inmates regarded as too dangerous for standard correctional facilities and ensuring that violence and escape attempts are kept to an absolute minimum. ADX Florence operates under a system of near-total isolation, where inmates carry out almost every daily activity alone. Unlike traditional prisons where prisoners may share living spaces, eat meals together, or interact during routine activities, inmates at ADX Florence spend most of their lives separated from all other prisoners. Eating, sleeping, bathing, and even exercise are generally done in complete isolation as part of the prison's strict control system. Meals are delivered directly to inmates through narrow slots built into the heavy steel doors of their cells. Prisoners do not enter cafeterias or dining halls and rarely see other inmates during meal times. Food trays are passed through the secure openings by correctional officers, allowing guards to avoid direct physical contact. Inmates eat alone inside their small concrete cells, often in silence, with no social interaction. This procedure reduces opportunities for violence, gang activity, or communication between dangerous prisoners. Sleeping arrangements are equally restrictive. Each inmate typically occupies a single cell designed for one person only. The bed is usually a concrete slab attached permanently to the wall or floor, topped with a thin mattress and basic bedding. Since inmates remain alone almost all day, the cell becomes their entire living environment for years, or even decades. The isolation can create a strong sense of confinement because prisoners spend nearly every hour in the same limited space with minimal change to their daily routine. Showers are also heavily controlled and often conducted individually. In some sections of the prison, inmates may shower inside their own cells using built-in fixtures. In other cases, prisoners are escorted one at a time to separate shower areas while under close guard supervision. These movements follow strict security procedures that may include hand restraints, searches, and monitored escort routes. The prison avoids group shower areas or shared facilities in order to prevent assaults, fights, or communication among inmates. The extreme isolation extends beyond physical separation. Human interaction is intentionally kept to a minimum. Many inmates go days with only brief conversations with correctional officers. Contact with family members is limited and highly monitored, while visits usually occur behind thick glass barriers. Even recreation periods are commonly carried out alone in enclosed concrete exercise spaces rather than shared prison yards. Supporters of this system argue that isolating inmates during daily activities is necessary because many prisoners housed at ADX Florence have histories of violence, escape attempts, gang leadership, or attacks on prison staff. Officials believe that separating inmates at all times helps maintain order and prevents dangerous incidents. Critics, however, argue that years of living, eating, and functioning almost entirely alone can severely damage a person's mental and emotional well-being. ADX Florence is considered one of the most secure prisons ever built, and its security system is designed to prevent escapes, violence, and unauthorized communication at every level. The entire facility operates through multiple layers of advanced physical and electronic security measures that work together to maintain constant control over inmates. Every movement inside the prison is monitored, restricted, and carefully managed by correctional staff and surveillance technology. One of the most visible security features is the extensive network of surveillance cameras positioned throughout the prison complex. Cameras monitor hallways, cell blocks, entrances, recreation areas, and movement corridors around the clock. Correctional officers observe these live video feeds from secure control rooms, allowing staff to track inmate activity continuously without requiring direct physical contact. This constant monitoring helps prison officials quickly respond to suspicious behavior, fights, self-harm attempts, or security threats before situations escalate. The prison also uses electronic sensors and detection systems to strengthen security. Motion detectors, pressure-sensitive systems, alarm mechanisms, and electronically controlled checkpoints are placed throughout the facility. These technologies help identify unusual movement or unauthorized access attempts within restricted areas. Many internal doors, gates, and barriers are connected to computerized control systems operated remotely by staff members, reducing opportunities for inmates to interfere with security operations. Remote-controlled steel doors are another major feature of ADX Florence. Guards can lock or unlock doors electronically from protected stations without standing directly near inmates. This minimizes physical interaction between staff and prisoners, lowering the risk of assaults or hostage situations. Inmates are usually moved individually through carefully controlled routes inside the prison, often while restrained and escorted by armed officers. Multiple doors and checkpoints separate each area of the facility, creating layered containment zones that prevent prisoners from moving freely. Outside the prison, heavy security barriers surround the entire complex. Tall, reinforced fences topped with razor wire form multiple perimeter layers designed to stop escape attempts. Guard towers staffed with armed officers overlook the grounds, while patrol systems monitor the outer security zones continuously. The prison's isolated location in Colorado also adds another layer of protection, as the surrounding terrain makes escape and outside assistance extremely difficult. Security procedures inside ADX Florence extend beyond physical barriers and technology. Mail, phone calls, and visits are heavily monitored to prevent inmates from communicating criminal orders to the outside world. Many prisoners housed there have histories of leading gangs, terrorist groups, or organized crime networks, so officials place strong emphasis on controlling all forms of communication. Even interactions between inmates are limited to reduce the possibility of coordinated violence or escape planning. The combination of surveillance systems, reinforced construction, electronic controls, strict movement procedures, and heavily armed security personnel has made ADX Florence famous for its reputation as an almost escape-proof prison. No inmate has ever successfully escaped from the facility since it opened, reinforcing its status as the highest security prison in the United States. ADX Florence has faced significant criticism from psychologists, human rights organizations, legal experts, and former inmates because of its heavy reliance on long-term solitary confinement. Many critics believe that keeping prisoners isolated for 22 to 24 hours a day over many years can cause serious psychological and emotional damage. The debate surrounding the prison is not only about security, but also about whether such extreme conditions are humane and morally acceptable. Mental health experts have warned that prolonged isolation can deeply affect the human mind. Humans are naturally social beings, and long periods without normal interaction may lead to emotional instability and psychological suffering. Reports from former inmates and studies on solitary confinement describe symptoms such as severe anxiety, depression, panic attacks, insomnia, paranoia, hallucinations, memory problems, and difficulty concentrating. Some prisoners reportedly become emotionally detached, lose social skills, or experience intense feelings of hopelessness after spending years with little meaningful human contact. Critics also point out that the physical environment inside ADX Florence may intensify these mental struggles. Inmates spend most of their lives inside small concrete cells with minimal stimulation and limited access to sunlight, fresh air, or social activities. Daily routines rarely change, and many prisoners have little opportunity for conversation or personal interaction. Over time, this repetitive and isolated environment can create emotional exhaustion and psychological stress that becomes increasingly difficult to manage. Human rights organizations have argued that extreme solitary confinement may violate basic standards of human dignity. Some groups compare long-term isolation to psychological punishment because of its potential effects on mental health. International organizations and prison reform advocates have repeatedly questioned whether keeping inmates alone for decades should be considered cruel or unusual treatment. Lawsuits have also been filed over the conditions inside Supermax prisons, especially regarding inmates who already suffer from mental illnesses before being placed in isolation. Former prisoners and some correctional staff members have described the emotional toll created by years of separation from normal society. Inmates may lose track of time, struggle with communication, or develop fear and distrust of social interaction. For prisoners eventually released from ADX Florence or transferred to lower security prisons, adjusting to ordinary human contact can become extremely difficult after spending so much time alone. Supporters of the prison argue that these measures are necessary for controlling highly dangerous individuals who could otherwise threaten prison staff, other inmates, or public safety. They believe solitary confinement is an important tool for managing violent offenders and preventing organized criminal activity inside prisons. Critics, however, continue to question whether security needs justify the long-term psychological consequences associated with such severe isolation. ADX Florence represents more than just a high-security prison. It has become a symbol of the difficult balance between protecting society and respecting human rights. The prison was created to contain inmates considered extremely dangerous, including terrorists, violent gang leaders, cartel members, and offenders with histories of attacking prison staff or attempting escapes. Supporters believe that strict control and extreme security are necessary to protect the public, correctional officers, and other prisoners from individuals who may continue to pose serious threats even while incarcerated. At the same time, the conditions inside ADX Florence have sparked ongoing ethical, legal, and human rights debates. Many critics question whether any prison system should keep people isolated for years or decades with very limited human contact. The central issue is whether a government can maintain public safety while still preserving the dignity and mental well-being of prisoners. This debate has become one of the most controversial discussions surrounding modern criminal justice systems. Supporters of the prison argue that ADX Florence is essential because some inmates cannot safely function in regular prisons. Certain prisoners have led violent gangs, organized criminal operations, or extremist groups capable of causing harm both inside and outside prison walls. Others have committed murders while already serving sentences in lower security facilities. From this perspective, strict isolation is viewed as a practical security measure designed to prevent violence, stop criminal communication, and maintain order within the prison system. Critics, however, argue that even dangerous inmates still possess basic human rights that should not be ignored. Human rights advocates believe prolonged solitary confinement can damage mental health so severely that it may cross the line into inhumane treatment. They question whether permanent or long-term isolation truly rehabilitates prisoners or simply punishes them psychologically. Some experts argue that prison systems should focus more on mental health care, rehabilitation programs, and gradual reintegration rather than relying almost entirely on isolation and control. The debate surrounding ADX Florence also raises broader questions about the purpose of prisons in society. Some people believe prisons should primarily focus on punishment and public protection, especially for violent offenders. Others believe correctional systems should also aim to rehabilitate inmates and prepare them for eventual reintegration into society whenever possible. ADX Florence challenges these ideas because many of its prisoners are serving life sentences or are considered too dangerous for normal rehabilitation programs. Legal scholars, psychologists, prison officials, and policymakers continue to discuss whether supermax prisons represent a necessary security solution or an example of excessive punishment. Cases involving inmate mental health, constitutional rights, and prison conditions have repeatedly appeared in courts and public discussions. As a result, ADX Florence remains at the center of one of the most important modern debates about justice, security, punishment, and human dignity.